Taken alone, this morning's gospel story is a rich one with many layers to it. A story that can be approached from all kinds of different angles. But taken along with the text immediately before it, it becomes a story of contrasts. We looked at that text last week. It's a story of the encounter between Nicodemus and Jesus. Last week's story took place under the cover of nighttime darkness, while this morning's takes place in the heat of the noonday sun. Last week's encounter was between Jesus and a man. This week's is between Jesus and a woman. Last week's man was a Jew with a reputation as a religious leader of the Jews. This week's woman is a Samaritan. And if it slips by you, the author of the gospel reminds us Jews do not share things in common with Samaritans. She also has a reputation, but not one nearly as stellar as Nicodemus's. She has a reputation of going through husbands, 5 of them in fact. Both encounters are discussions of all things spiritual. The author of John's Gospel lays the stories out side by side, but it's as if they are mirror reflections of each other. Night, day, man, woman, Jew, Samaritan, elite, upper class, common, lower class. And the genius of this way of laying out the two stories is the reading audience then finds itself automatically labeling and boxing the two characters, placing them somewhere on a spectrum, just like we do every day in everyday life with almost everyone we encounter. Christian, Muslim, Jew, agnostic, white, black, brown, Republican, Democrat, PhD, GED, dropout, HIV positive, HIV negative, male, female, cisgender, transgender, gay, straight, bisexual, monogamous, single, polyamorous, senior citizen, college youth, teenager. And with each label that we create, we also create borders and boundaries that define those labels. But this story is about crossing those borders and dismantling those boundaries. Jesus very literally crossed a geographical boundary that separated the Jews from Samaritans, 2 groups of people who had a history of prejudice against the other. He crosses social boundaries when he encounters a woman all alone at the well. And he crosses ethnic, political, and religious boundaries when he starts up a conversation with this unnamed Samaritan woman. And the conversation, it bounces from water to marital status and finally comes to rest on religion and worship, with Jesus pointing out that the day would come and had in fact already arrived when boundaries and divisions wouldn't exist between people with regards to worship. Religion wouldn't be defined by whether one worshiped on Mount Gerizim or at Jerusalem. It wouldn't matter who your ancestors were, whether you were Jew or Samaritan. Eugene Peterson paraphrases Jesus' words in this way: what you're called will not matter, and where you go to worship will not matter. It's who you are and the way you live that count before God. Your worship must engage your spirit in the pursuit of truth. That's the kind of people God is out looking for, those who are simply and honestly themselves before God in their worship. So what in heaven's name has happened? If the day had already come when boundaries within the worship of God were being dismantled, why do we experience so many divisions within religion today? Why do we speak in terms of conservative or progressive religion, of the religious right or the religious left? Why does our political affiliation affect whether we go to a church or not? Why does Sunday morning remain one of the most segregated hours in American life, with more than 8 in 10 congregations made up of one predominant racial group? Why are churches being kicked out of their denominational networks because they have the audacity to welcome and affirm LGBT people? Why is there a divide within the church between American citizens and immigrants or refugees? Someone please tell me why. If the day had already come, as Jesus said, that boundaries within the worship of God were being dismantled, why are we still experiencing them within religion today? The only answer I can come up with is, if we are experiencing those divisions within religion today, then maybe it's not true worship. Maybe it's not even true religion. In this morning's text, Jesus resists with holy resistance divisions and labels within the world. He crossed boundaries and stood in the margins, and in so doing, he modeled a new religion, a religion in which all are one. So important was it to Jesus that one of his last prayers, as recorded in John's Gospel, asked that all may completely be one. I believe that MCC churches are aimed in the direction of a religion that all are one in which there is diversity without divisiveness. But I also think we have been known to fall short of the mark. Problems arise when we are blind to the shortfall, and those problems fester when we are unwilling to redirect our course. It was at the most recent General Conference, when delegates were unable to achieve an election of our denomination's next moderator, that it came to light for many of us. We discovered that we have some isms that need attention. And unless we attend to those isms, I believe we are in danger of losing sight of true worship as defined by Jesus. Put simply, we have got to be more than just a gay church. Jesus was all about crossing the boundaries that separate and divide people. And that has to be a priority for us too. Walking away from church is not the way we do it. Neither is keeping conversation nice and polite by not talking about issues. The church, our church, is called to join in the resistance against that which seeks to divide us. If it means having a holy conversation with each other, a conversation the intent of which is to simply come to a better understanding of each other, then that's what needs to happen. If it means moving into uncomfortable territory where our values might clash, then we need to gather up our courage and move into that territory. The church should be a place of sanctuary. It should be a place where we find respite from the troubles of the world. But it also needs to be a place where we address the troubles of the world. We need to be agents of transformation, not just a social group in which we give everyone a big old group hug, sing a verse or two of Kumbaya, and head on back to our homes. That's the old way of doing worship. But we are called to a holy resistance that leads to new worship, one that tears down walls and dismantles the notion of boundaries and divisions. It's tough work because it means taking a look at ourselves and admitting that what we find may not be in alignment with God's will. And it's a work that's never completed. It's ongoing. But I believe you're up to the tasks. I believe that I can depend on you to support me in this holy work, and you can depend on me for the same thing. And so with that said, I want to close with some words from a song by Hezekiah Walker. I need you. You need me. We're all a part of God's body. I pray for you. You pray for me. I love you. I need you to survive. You are important to me. I need you to survive. May we all live our lives as if it is so. Amen.